Everyone saw the chrome gleam in the sunlight, but no one asked what it meant. To them, it was just a motorcycle. To me, it was the last living piece of my grandfather. A Harley Davidson with a red tank, chrome everywhere, and the kind of deep growl that wasn't noise, but memory. My driveway that afternoon looked less like home and more like a stage. On one side, me, boots planted on oil-stained concrete, leather jacket zipped tight, my grandpa's machine beside me like a loyal dog. On the other, the antagonists, Kylie Trent, HOA president, pink jacket so bright it hurt to look at, arms folded like she was auditioning for the role of queen. And next to her, her son Evan, 16, drowning in a hoodie, smirk curling at the corner of his mouth. He looked at me like he already knew how this would end, because his mother had written the script. And in the background, 2 uniformed officers leaned on the curb, bored, as if this whole show was just another Tuesday. "The bike," Kylie said, her voice sharp enough to cut glass, "is a nuisance. It's a violation. And as of this moment, Mr. Hart, it belongs to us." She tapped her son's shoulder like she was handing him a trophy. "He'll keep it quiet. He'll keep it safe. We're taking possession." I almost laughed. Almost. But there was nothing funny about someone trying to steal the last thing my grandfather left me. Evan's smirk widened like he could already feel the keys in his pocket. He muttered, "Mom said you'd give it to me anyway." I didn't yell. My grandpa taught me better than that. "Anger wastes energy," he used to say. "Fix the problem, don't scream at it." So I waited while Kylie rattled off her list, noise ordinances she'd written herself, complaints from neighbors who'd never spoken to me, violations no one could prove. The officers shifted. Finally, the older one with the tired mustache stepped forward. His tone was flat, professional. "Ma'am, we're here because you reported a vehicle in violation of a lien you claim the HOA has placed on it." He turned to me. "Sir, is this your vehicle?" I nodded once, reached into my jacket, pulled out a clear plastic sleeve. Title, registration, insurance, all laminated, all perfect. Years working in a mechanic's shop taught me one rule. If it's not documented, it didn't happen. The officer crouched by the Harley, compared VIN numbers. Perfect match. He snapped a photo for his report, then stood and handed my documents back. "The vehicle is legally registered to Mr. Hart. Title is clean. No liens with the DMV." And just like that, Kylie's fake smile cracked. "But our bylaws, our fines, we have a lien for unpaid fines." Her voice climbed higher, desperate. The officer shook his head slowly. "That's a civil matter. HOA fines don't authorize seizure of personal property. Without a court order, you can't touch his motorcycle. No probable cause here." Her son's smirk collapsed into confusion. The script was broken. His mother's kingdom had just been checked by reality. But Kylie wasn't the type to bow. Not in public, not in front of witnesses. The officers logged an incident number and left. Their cruiser rolled away, leaving the 3 of us in the thick silence of a neighborhood that smelled like cut grass and cheap perfume. Kylie's eyes burned into me. No more fake smile. Just promise. Just threat. "This isn't over, Ben." I nodded once. I knew people like her. They didn't give up when they lost. They shifted. They worked in shadows. They tried again. Quieter, dirtier. Her son tugged at her sleeve. She pulled away, never breaking eye contact with me or the Harley. She memorized everything, calculating, plotting, and I knew that wasn't the end of it. It was just intermission. Later, in the garage under the bare bulb, I sat with the bike, ran my hand across the fuel tank, cold and smooth, checked the small black disc I'd hidden under the seat months ago. An AirTag. Insurance against people exactly like Kylie. I adjusted the angle of the camera, pointed down my driveway. Red light blinking, always watching. Because I knew her next move wouldn't be loud. It wouldn't be public. It wouldn't involve bored cops and smug teenagers. It would come in the dark, when she thought I was asleep. When she thought the game was hers to win, and as I sat there in that quiet garage, I realized something my grandfather used to say was true. Some people build cages so perfect they can't stand the sight of freedom. Kylie Trent wasn't after fines. She wasn't after rules. She was after control. And my Harley, it was freedom. It was everything she couldn't own. I didn't know when she'd strike, but I knew she would. They thought I was sleeping. That's the mistake people like Kylie always make. They think silence means surrender. But I wasn't asleep. I was waiting. The clock read 2:17 a.m. when my phone buzzed softly. Motion detected. Driveway camera. My heart didn't race. My hands didn't shake. It was a calm so sharp it felt unnatural, the calm that comes when dread finally materializes into reality. On the screen of my tablet, a dark shape emerged. A flatbed tow truck crawling backward toward my garage with its lights off. The engine was a low growl, too quiet for a professional company. This wasn't repossession. This was theft. Two figures jumped out, hoodies pulled low, faces in shadow. They moved with the cold efficiency of people who had done this before. One scanned the street, the other crouched at my garage. They didn't bring crowbars or brute force. No, they had something smarter, a slim metal rod. I watched the screen as the thief slid it under the door, fishing for the emergency release cord. It took less than a minute. Click. My garage door shifted. Slowly, silently, it lifted just enough. And in that narrow crack, my Harley's chrome caught the faint glint of the truck's headlights. Like a lure, like bait. They didn't hesitate. They rolled it out like it was theirs, wheels whispering across concrete. No alarms, no noise, just practiced silence. They strapped it down on the flatbed with quick, brutal precision. Every movement rehearsed. In 5 minutes, the bike was... The garage door closed again. The truck pulled away. And the street fell silent, as if nothing had happened. But something had. I sat in the armchair, watching the red dot on my phone screen blink alive. The AirTag hidden under the seat sent out its first ping. For a second, it showed home. Then, it jumped, crawling down my street, turning onto the main road, heading south. I grabbed my keys, my jacket. Didn't call 911, not yet. A police report at this hour would mean an officer logging my statement, maybe driving by in an hour if I was lucky. That wouldn't save the Harley. That wouldn't save my grandfather's memory. This wasn't the time for help. This was the time for witness. I slid into my truck, engine off, coasting downhill until I was far enough not to be seen. Then I started it, headlights dark, trailing the blinking dot on my phone like it was a lifeline. It wasn't a chase. It was a shadowing. The flatbed moved like any other vehicle, steady, careful not to draw attention. And me, a few blocks back, following the digital breadcrumbs. 20 minutes later, the dot stopped. The tow truck had pulled into the skeleton of a forgotten strip mall, weeds cracking the pavement, windows boarded up, the kind of place where things went to disappear. I parked a block away and went in on foot. The night air was sharp, heavy, with the smell of oil and rust. My boots avoided broken bottles as I slipped into the shadows of a busted ice machine. The tow truck sat in the far corner, its engine rumbling low. The men unstrapped the Harley. My Harley. They wheeled it behind a graffiti-covered dumpster, hiding it like trash. My throat burned, but I swallowed the anger. Anger was a liability. Methodical. That's how you win. I pulled out my phone, switched from tracker to camera, recorded. The truck idled, then rolled out of the lot. The Harley sat alone behind the dumpster, chrome glinting like a heartbeat in the dark. I should have run to it, pulled it back into my hands right then. But I didn't, because this wasn't just about a stolen bike anymore. This was about proof, about catching Kylie in her own trap. So I stayed hidden, camera steady, documenting every second. Every frame another nail in the coffin she was building for herself. And when the tow truck disappeared into the night, leaving my grandfather's Harley abandoned in that graveyard of concrete and weeds, I whispered something to the quiet air. This isn't your win, Kylie. This is your mistake. I walked back to my truck. My phone still tracked the AirTag, a blue dot pulsing steady, behind that dumpster. The footage was saved, the VIN was already recorded. The police could confirm it belonged to me, but I knew something deeper now. The theft wasn't the endgame. It was the setup. Because when Kylie came knocking again, it wouldn't be about bylaws or fines. It would be about leverage, about power. About her belief that she could take what wasn't hers and force me to beg for its return. And when she made that call, the one I knew was coming, she'd have no idea the line was already recording. She thought she'd stolen my bike. She didn't realize she'd just given me the weapon to take her whole kingdom down. The sun hadn't risen yet, but I was already on my third cup of coffee. My house was still, silent, except for the glow of my laptop screen. On it, a grainy wide shot of that strip mall parking lot. My Harley, my grandfather's Harley, was just a faint silhouette behind a dumpster. Cold. Abandoned. The AirTag hadn't moved since the thieves dropped it there. A part of me wanted to storm down and drag it home. But that would have been reckless. That would have been emotional. And emotion is how you lose, so instead I called the non-emergency line. My voice calm, my words exact. My motorcycle was stolen. I know where it is. I have video evidence and live tracking data. Please dispatch an officer. The dispatcher's tone was weary. Routine. Sir, do not approach the vehicle yourself. Wait. For officers. I promised I would. I didn't tell her I was already sitting on hours of footage and a license plate number from the tow truck. You don't show all your cards too soon. An hour later, dawn cracked across the sky. The strip mall, lot filled with the beam of a cruiser's headlights. 2 officers stepped out. I watched on my laptop feed as they approached the dumpster cautiously. A flashlight swept across the dark and froze on chrome. My Harley. They radioed it in, confirmed the plate and VIN. It was official now. Stolen property, recovered. A knock. On my door pulled me from the screen. The same mustached officer from the standoff in my driveway stood there. His eyes held that tired sympathy of a man who's seen this kind of nonsense before. Mr. Hart, he said, we seem to be seeing a lot of each other. I let him in, showed him the footage, my garage cam catching the theft, the license plate clear as daylight, showed him the AirTag data, tracing the Harley's journey from my driveway to that abandoned lot. Piece by piece, the puzzle formed. He wrote it all down. The vehicle is secure at the city impound lot, he told me. You'll get it back once the case is processed. But I'll be honest, stolen vehicle cases like this are tough. The tow company's plate will probably trace to a shell corporation. Without a break, he shrugged. It's a long shot. I thanked him. Shook his hand. But inside, I knew this wasn't about luck. This wasn't random. It was Kylie. And she wasn't done. That afternoon, my phone rang. No caller ID. I let it buzz twice, then answered. Hello? My voice was neutral, flat. Ben. Her voice was smooth. Too smooth. The kind of fake sympathy that sticks to your skin like oil. It's Kylie. I heard what happened. Just terrible. This neighborhood is really going downhill. I didn't answer. Just let her talk. It's such a shame, she continued, her tone dropping to a confidential whisper. The police almost never recover things like that. And if they do, the impound fees are astronomical. Sometimes things disappear for good. She paused, letting the bait dangle. This was it. The pivot. From concerned neighbor to predator, but, you know. Her voice sharpened with pride. There might be a way to resolve all of this, for everyone's benefit. I forced a shaky sigh, played the part of a desperate man. I just want my bike back. I'll do whatever it takes. Those were the magic words. Blood in the water. Well, she said brightly, you know those fines? The board has been patient, but they've piled up. Thousands, I believe. It's very messy. Lawyers, court, dates. But what if it could all just go away? Her pause was smug. Triumphant. How? I asked, my voice small, cracked just enough. She purred into the phone. The association supports several wonderful charities. There's one in particular that could use a donation, a vehicle donation. The room went still. I needed her to say it out loud, to lay it bare. You want me to donate my Harley? It's not stolen, she chuckled, low and dry. Just misplaced. You sign over the title, we get it to the charity, and I'll personally see all your fines wiped clean. No more trouble. No more letters. Everyone wins. She thought she was clever. She thought she'd boxed me in. But what she didn't know was that she wasn't talking to a cornered man. She was talking to a witness who had already called the state attorney's office. The night before, after the police left, I'd called an old acquaintance, Mark Dwyer, a prosecutor, who handled white-collar crime. I told him everything, start to finish. He didn't interrupt, just listened. When I got to the part about the driveway standoff, he went quiet. When I told him the Harley had been stolen hours later, he finally spoke. Pattern of coercion, he said. She's setting you up. Expect a call. That's where she'll incriminate herself. Record it. So as Kylie spun her little web, Mark was already on the line. A three-way call. Their office recording system capturing every word with my consent. My handheld recorder clicking in as backup. 2 layers of proof. Let me think about it, I said, trying to sound uncertain. Her tone hardened instantly, the velvet glove slipping. There's nothing to think about, Ben. The offer is good today. Tomorrow, who knows where that bike will be. Parts get sold, things disappear. And then she hung up. The silence in my kitchen was deafening. But this wasn't defeat. It was victory. The predator had stepped into the trap. An hour later, Mark walked into my house, jeans and polo instead of a suit, but his eyes sharp as knives. He set a briefcase on my table. She took the bait, he said. I handed him my recorder. Here's the backup. He smiled grimly. Hook, line, and sinker. Some fights are loud, some are violent, but the most dangerous fights are quiet, fought across tables under dim lights with paper and patience. That's where the real victories are won. Mark spread files across my kitchen table like a general laying out a battle plan. The extortion call was the crown jewel, but every crime needs a chain, one link leading to the next until the whole story forms an unbreakable circle. First, Foundation, he said, sliding a document toward me. The original Harley title, notarized when I inherited it from my grandfather. My name clean across the page. No liens, no disputes. Ownership is airtight. That's non-negotiable. Next came the thick binder I'd been building for months. Every notice Kylie had sent me neatly filed in order. The bogus commercial vehicle warning, the excessive noise fine, the aesthetic blight letters. Each one paired with my written responses, complete with citations of state law. I had built the record brick by brick, proof that her campaign wasn't about community. It was about harassment. Mark flipped slowly, nodding. This isn't random. It's a pattern. Harassment designed to create pressure. And then he tapped the recorder. The payoff. The digital evidence came next. The garage cam footage of the theft, crystal clear. The flatbed tow truck, rolling silently into the frame. The thieves working with clinical precision, a perfect timestamp. We froze the video on the truck's license plate. Mark leaned forward, reading it aloud. Apex Asset Recovery. Shell Company. We'll trace it, but this already stinks. He slid in the next piece. The AirTag map. A neat breadcrumb trail from my garage to the dumpster. An unbroken chain of custody. Digital proof that the Harley hadn't just vanished. It had been deliberately hidden. And then came the knock at the door. I opened it to find Rosa, my neighbor. Sweet, older, the kind of woman who always had a kind word and a watchful, She held her phone in both hands, nervous but determined. Ben, she said softly, I couldn't sleep last night. I was on my porch. I saw what they did. I recorded it. On her shaky video, the same scene unfolded from a different angle. The unmarked truck, the hooded men, the Harley being wheeled away. Not just my word, not just my camera. Now there was another witness. Mark nearly laughed, shaking his head. Mrs. Alvarez, you may have just become the star witness of this entire case. Her shy smile trembled, but there was pride in it. Pride at standing up. Piece by piece, the story built itself. The title proving ownership. The binder proving harassment. The AirTag proving the theft. The footage proving execution. Rosa proving corroboration. And the extortion. Call proving intent. It was beautiful, cold, complete. A weapon built from patience. Mark leaned back, eyes on the ceiling. We could take this straight to court. Warrants, arrests, it would stick. But... His voice shifted, a sly grin spreading across his face. There's another option. He tapped the binder. The HOA has a monthly meeting next week, doesn't it? The idea clicked instantly. Not a courtroom, not behind closed doors, but in the very room where Kylie had built her empire, her little kingdom of intimidation and petty power. To take her down there, publicly with her neighbors watching, wouldn't just end her reign. It would erase the fear she had cultivated for years. The evidence is airtight, Mark said, but the delivery matters. If we show it at the meeting, she won't just be caught. She'll be undone. By her own voice, by her own actions, in front of everyone. The next week became quiet preparation. The calm before the storm. Mark and I met in a coffee shop across town, rehearsing like actors. He played Kylie, complete with a mock pink scarf he borrowed from the waitress for effect. Rosa recorded us, laughing every time Mark tried out her phony tone. You're not angry, Mark reminded me. Not desperate. You're calm, controlled, presenting facts. Let the evidence do the shouting. We cut the footage into a sharp, brutal sequence. My garage cam of the theft, then Rosa's porch video for corroboration. Seamless, undeniable. We isolated the most damning line from Kylie's call. Think of it as a donation. You sign over the title and I'll see your fines wiped clean. Less than a minute long. A dagger disguised as audio. Rosa even made t-shirts that read, "Let facts talk." She wore 2, just in case. The plan was simple. During the open forum of the meeting, I would stand up. No anger, no theatrics. I would politely request to play an audio clip to provide context for my settlement proposal. Kylie, drunk on victory, would give permission. She wouldn't be able to resist. And in doing so, she would walk willingly into her own execution. At night, alone in my garage, I thought of my grandfather. The way he used to rebuild carburetors, laying out each tiny piece on a rag, cleaning them, organizing them, reassembling until the engine purred like new. That's what this felt like. Every file, every recording, every clip, pieces of a broken machine laid out carefully. Now it was time to reassemble. And when it roared back to life, it wouldn't just be my Harley breathing again. It would be this whole neighborhood. Kylie didn't know it yet, but her kingdom was already burning. Everyone thought it would be just another boring HOA meeting. Budget reports, landscaping updates, a new debate over holiday decorations. Nobody walked into that clubhouse expecting fireworks. Nobody but me. I'd ironed my shirt, polished my boots. Not for her, for me. My grandfather used to say, if you respect the process, it will respect you back. Tonight wasn't about anger. It was about order, about proof. The clubhouse smelled faintly of coffee and carpet cleaner. Residents shuffled in with their small grievances, parking complaints, weeds, basketball hoops. They didn't know they were about to witness a collapse. They didn't know they were about to watch a queen stripped of her crown. Kylie stood at the front of the room behind a polished podium, wearing a crisp white blazer. She looked untouchable, every inch the ruler of her tiny kingdom. She greeted people by name, smiled like she hadn't just tried to steal a man's motorcycle in the middle of the night. Evan sat in the front row, bored, thumbs scrolling across his phone. I slipped into the back row. Didn't look at anyone, didn't speak. Just waited. The meeting droned on. Budgets, rules, landscaping. Kylie wielded Robert's rules of order like a weapon, cutting off anyone who rambled too long, steering every topic back to her agenda. She was in her element, smiling, commanding, untouchable, and then came the final item. Open forum, she announced brightly. Does any member of the community wish to address the board? My moment. I stood slowly. A few heads turned. Was the man with the loud motorcycle, the one always at odds with her. The troublemaker. Their eyes flicked from me to Kylie, waiting for the clash. The board recognizes Mr. Hart, she said, her smile tight, triumphant. She thought I was walking into her arena to beg. I walked to the microphone, shoulders just a little slumped. Voice quiet, measured. Good evening, Madame President, members of the board. I'm here tonight regarding my outstanding fines. I've had significant property loss recently. It's forced me to reconsider my position. Kylie's smile widened, practically glowing with victory. She thought I was folding. She thought I was broken. I'd like to propose a settlement, I continued. But to explain my proposal, I need to provide some context. With the board's permission, I'd like to play a brief audio recording. Magnanimous in her triumph, Kylie nodded. Permission granted, Mr. Hart. I pulled a small thumb drive from my pocket and walked to the laptop connected to the projector. Plugged it in, clicked play, and then her voice filled the room. Think of it as a donation. You sign over the title to the bike, and I will personally see to it that all of your fines are wiped clean. The entire slate. No more letters, no more trouble. Everyone wins. The room froze. For a moment, silence. Then a collective gasp rippled through the residence. Heads snapped toward Kylie. Her smile vanished, face draining pale. Before she could speak, I clicked the next file. The projector screen flickered to life. My garage cam footage played. The dark tow truck, hooded figures rolling my Harley out. Into the night. Then Rosa's video from across the street, shaky but clear, showing the same theft from another angle. Seamless. Corroborated. The room erupted. Murmurs. Shouts. Board members leaned away from Kylie like she was radioactive. Evan dropped his phone, head in his hands. Kylie grabbed the podium microphone, shrieking, "This is fake! It's edited! It's slander!" But her voice cracked. Nobody believed her. Uncle Donnie shot up from his seat, holding his fishing gnome, like a trophy. "She fined me $200 for this," he shouted. Laughter broke out, bitter and sharp. Another resident stood. "She fined me for a wheelchair ramp." His voice shook with rage. The murmurs grew louder, heavier. No longer gossip, judgment. The board's vice president rose, face pale, hands trembling. "I move for an immediate emergency executive session to discuss the conduct of the president." Another member seconded. "A coup in real time. Mom, just stop." Evan muttered, too loud. His words echoed through the room like a hammer strike. Kylie's voice screeched over the chaos. "I was protecting property values." Rosa, calm from her seat, shot back. "Values don't hide tow trucks behind dumpsters." The dam broke. Residents shouted from every corner. Years of fines, threats, and petty tyrannies came pouring out at once, and then the clubhouse doors opened. In walked Mark, calm and steady in jeans and a polo, flanked by two uniformed officers and a woman in a business suit holding a badge. A hush fell. Mark stepped to the podium, picked up the mic Kylie had dropped. "Good evening. My name is Mark Dwyer from the State Attorney's Office. I believe we have a few things to discuss." Chaos turned to silence. The board members, pale and sweating, shuffled into the back room for their emergency session. The officers remained at the doors, silent sentinels. Residents leaned forward in their chairs, wide-eyed, watching a woman who had ruled them with fear suddenly reduced to nothing more than a defendant. The predator had walked into the trap, and the cage had snapped shut. When the meeting ended, Kylie Trent was no longer the queen of anything. She was pale, trembling, eyes darting like a trapped animal. But this wasn't just about humiliation. This was about law, about consequences. Detective Miller, the no-nonsense woman in the business suit, stepped forward. Her voice was calm, even, but it carried the weight of a hammer. "Kylie Trent, we have a warrant to search your home, signed by a judge this afternoon. We will be seizing all electronic devices and financial records related to your conduct as HOA president." The room went dead silent. Kylie didn't protest, didn't scream. She just sagged against the podium, lips parting in a whisper. No one could hear. One officer gently took her elbow. Evan followed, his face red and wet with shame, as they were escorted out into the night. For the residents, it was over. For me, it was just beginning. The next morning, Mark, Detective Miller, and I drove to the industrial edge of town, to a place that smelled of rust, cigarettes, and desperation. Apex Asset Recovery, the tow company, the supposed professionals, who had rolled my Harley away like thieves in the night. The lot was surrounded by chain-link fence, barbed wire sagging overhead. A rusted shack squatted in the middle. Out front stood a heavy man in a grease-stained shirt, arms crossed, trying to look tougher than he felt. "Private property," he barked as we pulled in. "You've got no business here." Miller didn't flinch. She flipped open her badge. Mark handed him a folded piece of paper. "Search warrant," he said flatly. The man's bluster died in an instant. He knew the game was up. His name was Reuben Pike, owner of Apex Asset Recovery, the muscle behind Kylie's scheme. And now, he looked like a man caught with his hand in the till. Inside, his office was a mess. Old invoices stacked high, a faint smell of stale beer mixed with burnt coffee. Mark scanned the papers while Miller moved like a hawk, eyes sharp, every detail recorded. "Show me the order for a Harley Davidson," Mark said. "Picked up from this address 2 nights ago." He slid a paper across the desk with my address, scrawled in the corner. Reuben hesitated, chewing his lip. Finally, with a groan, he pulled a greasy invoice from a spike on the wall. The words were there in black ink. My bike's make and model, my address. The instruction: remove and store offsite. Await further instructions. Not an HOA work order, not a repossession, just a bare command signed under a name that made my blood run cold. Trent Consulting Services. It wasn't the HOA. It was Kylie, hiding behind a fake business. I asked about cameras. Reuben grunted, jerking a thumb at a rusted pole outside. "Old. Don't work." But inside, Miller's sharp eyes caught it, a humming DVR rack, lights blinking red. "Funny," she said. "Looks alive to me." A skinny kid in a greasy cap reached behind it, fingers closing on the power cord. Miller's voice cracked like a whip. "Hands off." The boy froze. She bagged his hands, then pulled the DVR into evidence. Mark plugged in a backup monitor. Grainy footage flickered onto the screen. And there it was, the flatbed backing into my driveway. The hooded men, my Harley being rolled out under the night sky. The timestamp matched my garage cam down. To the minute. Pike tried one last lie. "Could be old." Mark tapped the glowing date in the corner. "Yesterday." Silence fell. Miller snapped photos of the screen, frame by frame. My garage, my bike, the tow truck, chain of custody sealed. Reuben's shoulders slumped, his empire of scrap and steel crumbling around him. Miller read off charges like a death sentence. Operating. Without a license. Illegal impoundment. Failure to report a tow. Each violation a heavy fine. Stacked together, enough to bury him. He cracked fast. "They always do." "She paid cash," he stammered. "Said it was abandoned. Told me to keep it off the books." "How many times?" Mark pressed. "Half a dozen, maybe more. Cars, bikes, always the same. No paperwork, just cash." It spilled out of him in a flood. Kylie had used him again and again. Each time, paying. To make vehicles vanish. Each time, keeping it hidden from the official record. He'd been her deniable muscle. Her private enforcer, he agreed to sign a sworn statement. Anything to save his own skin. The final link snapped into place. Not just extortion, not just harassment, but criminal conspiracy. A direct order tying Kylie to the theft of my Harley. We left the lot with boxes of invoices, the DVR sealed, and a confession in Miller's hands. The case wasn't just strong, it was airtight. Back in the neighborhood, word spread like wildfire. The queen was dethroned, the board fractured. Residents, once terrified, now stood tall on their lawns, trading stories of fines, threats, intimidation. Uncle Donnie pulled his fishing gnome out of storage and planted it proudly in his garden, holding it like a banner of victory. For years, Kylie had ruled through fear. But fear dies quickly when the truth steps into the light. As I polished my Harley in the garage that night, still sitting safe in police impound but already whole in my mind, I thought about what my grandfather once told me. The loudest bullies. are usually the weakest. You don't beat them by shouting louder. You beat them by keeping receipts. And now every receipt was stacked, signed, and sealed. Kylie thought she'd taken my Harley. But in the end, all she really took was the rope to hang herself with. Fear used to hang in the air like fog in this neighborhood. You could feel it in every clipped conversation, every lowered gaze when Kylie walked by. She had built her kingdom on intimidation, on fines slipped quietly into mailboxes, on threats, whispered at doorsteps. But after the meeting, after the audio, the video, the arrival of the state attorney, fear was gone. It was astonishing how quickly people changed when they realized the queen wasn't untouchable anymore. The very next morning, Rosa came by with a clipboard and a determined smile. "We're drafting a petition," she said. "Special meeting. Recall vote." It didn't take convincing. Word spread door to door, neighbor to neighbor. A movement that would have once been whispered in shadows became loud, open, unstoppable. People who had lived under her rule for years practically snatched pens out of Rosa's hand to sign. By the second day, more than half the community had already pledged. By the third, nearly two-thirds. It wasn't anger alone, it was relief. Relief that the nightmare was ending. I walked the streets collecting signatures, and for the first time in 5 years, strangers stopped me just to talk. They told me their stories. The woman whose bird bath had lowered property values. The father whose son's basketball hoop had cost him $300 in fines. The man in a wheelchair who had been fined for his accessibility ramp. Each story another crack in Kylie's facade. Each story a reminder that it had never been about protecting values. It was about control. It was about her. The recall. Meeting was scheduled a week later in the same clubhouse where she had once ruled, but the energy couldn't have been more different. Instead of stiff silence and guarded stares, the room buzzed like a celebration. People packed in shoulder to shoulder, standing room only. The vice president, looking as though he'd aged a decade in a week, called the meeting to order. His hands shook on the gavel. He read the petition aloud, his voice catching as the words echoed through the room. Motion to remove President Kylie Trent from her position, effective immediately. Kylie sat in the back this time. No podium, no power, just another homeowner, with a lawyer beside her. She looked smaller than I had ever seen her. Hair unkempt. Eyes ringed with sleepless nights. The vote was swift. Hands shot up in the air, nearly unanimous. The motion passed. Just like that, Kylie was gone. The room erupted into cheers. Not jeers, not cruelty, just pure relief. Uncle Donnie held up his fishing gnome like a battle standard, earning laughter and applause. Rosa hugged half the room before she finally sat down, tears on her cheeks. It wasn't just a vote. It was a revolution. A quiet, suburban revolution. One by one, motions followed. Terminate the contract with Apex Asset Recovery. Passed. Censure the remaining board members who had enabled her. Passed. Form a committee to revise the bylaws, stripping out the vague language Kylie had weaponized. Unanimous. The machine she had built to rule with fear was dismantled piece by piece, not with anger, but with order. By her own rules turned against her. But outside that room, Kylie's life was unraveling even faster. Her house, once manicured like a magazine cover, grew ragged. The for sale sign went up on the lawn within days. Rumor spread quickly. Her lawyer urging her to liquidate before legal fees swallowed her whole. The very neighbors she had fined for weeds and chipped shutters now walked by her sagging hedges and shook their heads. The charity she had so proudly mentioned, the youth program she wanted me to donate my Harley to, was exposed as a cow shell, with her son Evan listed as its only officer. Emails surfaced, showing Kylie's plan to funnel donations straight into her own family's pocket. Evan didn't strut anymore. He kept his head down, moving through the neighborhood like a ghost. Detective Miller's investigation uncovered accounts Kylie had quietly siphoned HOA money into. Thousands collected from bogus fines sitting in unreported ledgers. Her carefully crafted image of the selfless president protecting values was gone, stripped bare to reveal what she had always been, a thief with a title. And yet, the strangest? Part was how quickly the neighborhood healed without her. Small freedoms sprouted everywhere. The kid down the street had his basketball hoop back up within days. Rosa planted a wind chime that would have once earned her a violation. Uncle Donnie left his gnome by the garden gate like a badge of honor. People lingered on porches, swapping stories, laughing in ways I hadn't heard in years. Kylie's absence was more than a vacancy. It was a release. One night, I walked the street at dusk. The air was soft, filled with the sound of sprinklers and children's laughter. For the first time, the place felt like a community instead of a kingdom. I thought of my grandfather again. Of the way he used to tell me that cages aren't always made of bars. Sometimes they're made of rules, of fines, of fear. Kylie had built a cage for the entire neighborhood, and she had believed we'd live in it forever. But fear only works until someone stands up. She tried to take my Harley. In the end, she lost her crown, her board, her house, and her reputation. Everything she built on intimidation crumbled the moment the truth walked into the light. And yet, as satisfying as it was, I didn't feel triumph. Just quiet. The way you feel after a storm passes. The air is still heavy, but you can breathe again. The neighborhood was breathing again. The first time I saw my Harley again, it sat dusty under the harsh lights of the city impound lot. A month of silence, a month of sitting behind fences and evidence tags, but even covered in grime, even with the smell of oil and concrete hanging, around it the machine still gleamed, still pulsed with memory. I signed the papers with steady hands. The clerk barely looked at me when she slid the keys across the counter. But for me, it was like holding my grandfather's hand again. A promise renewed. Back in my garage, I spent the whole day with it. Not just cleaning, restoring. Every swipe of the rag across the chrome felt like erasing a scar. Every polish of the tank felt like reclaiming a piece of myself Kylie had tried to take. When I was finished, the bike didn't just shine. It glowed. The engine purred the first time I turned the key. That deep, steady rhythm. Not loud, not violent. Just alive. And outside the garage, the neighborhood itself was alive again, too. Uncle Donnie's fishing gnome stood proudly in his garden, like a soldier who had finally come home from war. Rosa's porch had wine chimes swaying in the breeze, their soft notes drifting across the street. Kids played basketball under the hoop that had once been banned. Parents stood watching, not worried about violation letters, but smiling like they'd been waiting years for this. The new HOA board wasted no time. Their first act, amnesty. Every fine issued under Kylie's reign wiped clean. A forensic accountant dug through the books, finding the siphoned funds, the shell charities, the paper trail of greed. And slowly, the story spread beyond the neighborhood. Local news cameras showed up one morning, catching residents laughing together in yards that had once been policed like prisons. And Kylie? Her lawyer tried to cut a deal, but Mark told me the state wasn't interested in mercy. Not this time. Extortion, grand theft, conspiracy. The evidence was overwhelming. The videos, the invoices, the confession from Pike, and her own voice on the recording. A perfect case. Her house went on the market. A once pristine lawn now overgrown, hedges ragged, the for sale sign leaning like a tired soldier. Neighbors passed by shaking their heads. For years she had fined others for weeds, for paint colors, for chipped shutters. Now, her own home stood as a monument to hypocrisy. But for me, it wasn't about her anymore. One Saturday afternoon, the sun high and warm, I rolled the Harley out of the garage. The leather seat was hot against my jeans. The chrome caught the sunlight like fire. I pulled on my gloves, my helmet, my old leather jacket. The same one I wore that first day in the driveway when Kylie tried to claim what wasn't hers. I turned the key. The bike roared to life. Not a roar of defiance, not a roar of anger, just the sound of freedom. Neighbors waved as I rolled down the street. Rosa on her porch swing, smiling with her whole face. The kids at the park, pausing their game to point at the bike. Even Donnie tipping his cap with one hand while the other rested on his fishing gnome like it was a trusted sidekick. I rode past Kylie's house. The blinds were drawn, the lawn unkempt. The for sale sign swayed gently in the breeze. I didn't slow down, didn't smirk, didn't feel triumph, just quiet. Because it was never really about her. It was about a line. She drew it, dared me to let her cross it, thought I would fold, thought I would trade my dignity for peace. But a quiet life bought with submission isn't peace. It's a cage. My grandfather taught me to fix what was broken. Engines, machines, even neighborhoods. And sometimes fixing means standing your ground, not with fists, not with rage, but with patience, with proof, with the kind of quiet strength that lets a bully build their own trap and walk straight into it. The open road stretched ahead as I turned out of the subdivision. The engine's hum blended with the wind rushing past my helmet. Each mile away from that neighborhood carried a lesson deeper into me. You don't stop bullies by yelling louder. You stop them by refusing to bend. You stop them with truth, with calm, with the kind of resolve that makes them realize they were never in control to begin with. The Harley carried me toward the hills, sunlight bouncing off the chrome like a beacon. Behind me, the neighborhood was breathing free again. Ahead of me, the road stretched endless, alive with possibility. Some people might say this story was about a motorcycle. They'd be wrong. It was about freedom, about dignity, about the one thing my grandfather always said was worth more than anything else. If you don't stand up for what's yours, no one else will. The wind rushed harder, the road opened wide, and I twisted the throttle. The engine thundered, steady and true. I wasn't just riding my Harley. I was riding every piece of myself she had tried to take and failed. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't just feel safe. I felt free.